We have Tanya Zuckerbrot, who for me is the Jewish celebrity. I don't care about all these celebrities that are going around and going on movies and all this other stuff. When I look at celebrities, and I look at only how resilient they are when they get hit and they keep coming back and they keep helping and they keep doing. Tanya has not only rechanged her brand multiple times to adapt to the situations, to adapt to reality, but she's also taken her influence, her power, her success, and her desire to keep giving back to the Jewish world and back to people who are fighting against terrorism. It's not normal that people will do that. Most people are sitting on the side and keeping their platform and they say, oh, I'm really scared. I'm going to get hurt. But Tanya faced it head on and is facing it head on and is using what she has and her passion and her energy to do really what she's supposed to do. She's a regular on all the TV. She's been one of the most famous women entrepreneurs in the country, in the world. My wife, as a small plug, my wife used the F Factor for our wedding, and my wife was very happy about it. We know so many people who are on it. We still have all the protein powders, and it's really been a game changing for people. And it's really amazing to hear your story. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I have to say also, out of all the podcasts we've done, and we've done a lot, yeah, he was the most excited for this one. Kept telling me, oh, do you know who she is? I said, I don't really know. But he was just super excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm humble. Thank you for that introduction.
Tanya, can you give us a couple-minute background about you and how you got to this point where you basically become the symbol of advocacy for the people who can't speak for themselves?
Let's take a look at her shirt also. Let's see what the shirt says.
So thank you for having me. My name is Tanya Zuckerbrot, and I'm the CEO and founder of a nutrition wellness company called F Factor. I began my career as a clinical dietitian working in a hospital, prescribing diets to cardiovascular and diabetic patients. So weight loss, weight management, life coaching was not on my radar. I really came from a clinical perspective of science, of wanting to recognize how integrative medicine is really the solution for overall health. So you have Western medicine, but nutrition really can impact a patient's health. It can minimize symptoms. It can reduce how much medication is necessary. And I started to prescribe high fiber diets because I recognized that fiber lowered cholesterol, managed blood sugar levels, and then all these patients started losing weight. And that really was sort of the happy accident of how my private practice started to pivot into more of a weight loss space, simply through the referrals of these clinical patients that were losing weight as a byproduct.
It's amazing because, we also actually came from the fitness world and we got into financial services. So I was a personal trainer. I had a personal training company because I was entrepreneurial and I couldn't just be a nutritionist. I couldn't just be a personal trainer. I had to own the company and build, and you never get settled for what you have. And then next thing you know, I met somebody, one of my clients started referring me. Then I got to financial services, and my biggest clients and closest friends now are all clients of mine back in the day when I was a personal trainer. Yeah. And you get so deep into somebody's life and you can really change and impact somebody's life. Are you feeling that a lot of clients of yours have always said to you what were the positive comments that clients of yours were saying to you?
I mean, I've been doing my work for 25 years, and I believe at the heart of anyone who's successful, there is passion, but there's compassion, and there's a drive to want to leave the world a better place. That's why Jewish people have always been creators and inventors. We have this innate drive to have an impact. And I think for me, when I went into my field of nutrition, the median salary was $55,000. I did not enter the field to make money. Of course, I was looking for a livelihood, but my number one goal was to find a line of work that I was passionate about because I love food and wellness. But I also knew I wanted to work with people directly. That was really important to me. They saw a woman that was truly invested in their well-being. And it was so much more than just the scale or their lipid profile. My message was always about inspiring people to live their best life, to be the best they could be, to live their life with excellence and integrity. And that means giving 100% and not settling for mediocrity where greatness can exist. Don't settle for mediocrity in your health or your weight. Certainly that was something that I was contributing to, giving them the tools and the knowledge to make those small corrections so that they could look and feel their best. But once you sort of check that box, you start to re-examine everything else in your life because you realize I'm not limited. I am powerful. Anything I set my mind to, I can create. So what else in my life feels mediocre? You start to examine your relationships, your career, And that to me is the journey of life, is never settling for mediocrity where greatness can exist, living your best life and recognizing that life is a journey.
So how do you tell people and
That's amazing.
how do you coach people to live their best life?
I believe that we are all the architects of our life. So think about what an architect does when they meet with a client. They say, okay, so I'm here to design the home that you want to live in. Now, based on the client's desires, a home can look very different. One home could be a duplex. One home could be a ranch. One home could be a coconut hut on an island. And there's no right or wrong home. They all provide shelter. And therefore, if that's what the client desires, then that would be my job to help them to build that. But before you start nailing in the hammer and nails, it is the plans, right? That is what the architect does. They make the drawing, the schematic. And when I sit with the client, that's the first thing that we do. I'm like, what about your life feels mediocre? What do you want to improve? And of course, help them wait. That's why they come to me at F Factor. I'm like, but there's more, because typically those are the symptoms of something that's unresolved. When we are not putting our health first, or we're not managing our weight because we're relying on food for comfort or whatever the reliance is, right? To numb ourselves for fun. We're using food for something, the way people use food. Similarly, the way that people would use like drugs or alcohol to escape, right? So when someone's struggling, typically the byproduct, which is what we think is the problem, is really not the core of the issue. So by going deeper, it's really understanding what is it that someone wants. And once we write all that down, then it's about creating the steps to get there. And I think what often happens is that we have such lofty goals. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a size 6. I want to get married. That we look at where we are and we look at the end game. So if we think about the alphabet, there's letters. There's A, and then there's B, C, D, all the way to Z. So we're at A and we want to get to Z, but we forget that there's B through Y. And it's in those steps, it's in the work that success happens. So the example I would give, if someone's like, Tanya, I want to meet the man of my dreams. All right, so
I love that people are asking you those questions.
Yes.
Like, and they ask the same thing to us, which is funny because it's a very similar.
But we have a very similar approach. We don't have any prepackaged solutions. The first meeting is just to listen to what they're all about and see what do they want, a coconut hut or do they want a duplex? What is it they're looking to accomplish? So it's the same. It's the same approach.
And going back to that thought about the different homes, what I always tell clients, I'm like, don't compare your home to anyone else, because we all have different values. What you may value may be very different than what someone else values. So to compare your home to someone else's home, maybe that home is what they desire, but that doesn't match your values. So ultimately, when you think about designing your life and being the best you can be, it has to do with your own value system. And that's something we can talk more about. But going back to what you were saying, like, that's so interesting, Tanya, people talk about marriage. I've heard it all. And why is it people feel so comfortable sharing these things with me? Because they know that I'm invested in their happiness. When I'm looking at you right now, I hope you feel that this is a genuine connection I'm having with Tanya.
100%.
She looks me dead in the eye. This is an authentic person, and this is someone that cares about me in the conversation that we're having. And I really attribute my success in nutrition to that when a client is with me, they feel that they're the most important person in the room. And of course they are, but it's not just because they're paying me for my time. It's because I do believe that is a gift God gave me. I have a uniquely compassionate heart, and I consider that a blessing, but also a burden, because I know I'm supposed to do something with it. I'm not supposed to just selfishly take all this love and compassion I have and just, contain it for myself. I do feel such a need to help people. So we started off this podcast and we were talking about my business, and we said, how do you describe yourself? Well, for 25 years, I have described myself on podcasts and media outlets, done speaking engagements as Tanya Zuckerbrot, CEO and founder of F Factor, a health and wellness company, one of the fastest growing health and wellness companies in the country. Now I define myself differently. I'm still those things, but what has, I think, really become at the forefront of how I'm seeing myself based on the need is I'm Tanya Zuckerbrot. I'm a proud Jewish woman. I am a Zionist. And I need to use my voice right now to speak on behalf of Israel and fight anti-Semitism.
Well, it's the same structure that you were doing before. you are going and you're seeing somebody in need and something in need, and you're using that same empathy and the same character that you had before. You're just channeling it differently. I always said that God gave me, and we say it all the time, is God gave me an ability to speak, an ability to connect with people. And even at a young age, I was able to have a lot of success. We're the fastest growing young financial professional in the country. And all these things were happening because God gave me that voice, but I was able to then channel it and go, okay, how can I really help you? And in fitness, when I was in college doing it by accident, I was making $100,000 a year in cash in college, barely even training, but having trainers work for me because I had that empathy. And then you have a different type of empathy because you just have to channel it. It's through you, and you're just channeling it to people who can't speak for themselves. And you're speaking for the people we were talking before about the refugees in a lot right now, and that there's a huge problem with suicide. And you're going, nobody, the first thing you said to me is nobody is talking for them. That's the first thing you said. And that's the same thing with a lot of these people. They go, no one is speaking up for me, but you then stepped in and showed people with your voice how you could speak up for them.
I went through something personal these past few years that was very challenging. And many people have said, well, maybe that happened to set you up for this. And my answer is no, it would have happened anyway. I have I have some strengths and I have liabilities. And in the past, people could argue that my righteousness is a liability because my right is right. It doesn't mean that it's right. It's my right. It's the way I see the world. What happened on October 7th is wrong. It is flat out wrong. Rape is not resistance. Killing babies is not resistance. Kidnapping is.
I would say even more than just being wrong, it's evil.
It's evil. But if there's right and wrong, it's wrong, right? Of course it's evil. So that already, I had a visceral response to that. Like many people, not just Jewish people, but people with a good heart saw that. And it was one of the hardest things to bear witness to. As if that was not bad enough, the response from the world to Israel was something that I don't think any of us could have expected. And therefore, I think what triggered this activism in me, or for me to pivot from 100% of my focus to nutrition to speaking, I don't want to say on behalf of the Jewish people, but for the Jewish people. It certainly would not be so arrogant saying anyone asked me to speak on their behalf, but as a proud Jewish woman, to use my voice and platform to amplify the messaging that is so necessary. I would have had to do it no matter what was happening in my life, because to stand by and not participate in trying to reverse all the lies and misinformation, the silence is complicit. And you had asked something in the other room, prior to the podcast, and you said, Tanya, so many people who, have platforms or run companies are afraid to speak up. Now, I'll say two things. Even though I have followers on social media, I'm not an influencer. If I influence you, I'm flattered, but I'm the CEO and founder of a company, and I am a registered dietitian. Those are my skills. That's what I get paid for. I don't get paid for doing social media. I use social media because I saw it as a way to create a community and to connect and inspire and educate. So the idea of using that platform, it was always about creating community for me. It was always about educating for me. I was educating on fiber and wellness, but now I'm just educating on the facts and trying to dispel all this misinformation. I am so disheartened by how pervasive anti-Semitism has become worldwide. And my hope is that, like everything that has happened in Jewish history, is from our worst pain and suffering, there is something positive that comes out of it. And I do believe that as Jews, we had really become very comfortable and I think somewhat complacent. And I think we failed to recognize that anti-Semitism had never really gone away. It was really just right under the surface, because it could not have gone to 0 to 100 the way it did if it had not been festering this whole time.
There's no question there's a lot of anti-Semitism, whether it's public or it's in private or it's quiet. And if you recall, what was going on in Israel before October 7th, the 6-8 months leading up to it, was probably one of the most disunifying times ever. So for, however you want to say it, God comes along and gives us a whack, and now we're the most unified.
And we're seeing it in academia as well. Look what's happening all over universities, and now finally people are exploring where was the funding coming from, and how is that funding influencing what our students are learning. And we are seeing a reckoning. We saw what happened with McGill at Penn. We saw what happened with Gay at Harvard. So my hope is that as the anti-Semitism finally became so evident that people couldn't choose to ignore it, and it only happened because of what happened October 7th and the world's response to it, my hope is that maybe that will be the silver lining. My hope.
Well, I found it that in World War II and around the Holocaust time, the U.S. knew what was going on, and they didn't just go in right away. They knew there was aerial shots, there was all this other stuff, but they had to wait till Pearl Harbor happened for them to actually enter into the war and D-Day and liberate France and all the other stuff. So it took a long time for them to see what was going on and to not act. There had to be anti-Semitism. And then what happens after is now there's this big mesh of all these people. Nazism was murdered and it was destroyed, but that doesn't mean it was actually eliminated. And now we're seeing swastikas in the streets. It's insanity. And what's happened that I found is now they have a platform to speak up. And now Sacha Baron Cohen said if Goebbels had Instagram, he would have annihilated all the Jews. It would have finished everybody. But now it can become popular and it can be amplified, and that's what's amplifying the voices.
And I think that's where I made this decision to commit my platform to fighting anti-Semitism, not because I have tens of millions of followers, but because every voice matters. And that's something that I try to encourage my friends, family members, colleagues. Every voice matters. And the worst thing we can do as Jewish people is expect someone else to do the work. Because if we all just said, well, she has a bigger platform, he has a bigger platform, but that's not my job, or I don't know how to do it well, it would be really quiet. We are already less than 0.2% of the world's population. We can't afford not to be speaking out on our own behalf. Forget expecting anyone else to do it. And I guess I just feel a calling and responsibility to do what's right. And what we have seen is wrong. The response to what happened is more wrong. And my heart is one that is compassionate for sure, but I think there's something else also driving me. And it just has to do with wanting to live a purpose-driven life. And how can you sit by right now and not be part of the solution, or not look back and say, I tried to do something?
Where did that moment come from? What was that? You said something is driving me, and it hit me. There was a moment in your life that allowed you to keep driving and allowed you to keep pushing and being resilient. What was that moment in your life? And it could have been at 3 years old, because it sounds like you've gone through serious obstacles, and there has to be something that when push comes to shove and it gets really, really challenging, that there's something in there that says, Tanya, keep going.
I've thought a lot about that question because I certainly have had challenges. Like many people, my parents got divorced. I got divorced. I almost faced financial ruin with my company. Then I went through a smear campaign. My character was assassinated publicly. There were so many times that I didn't want to keep going, and it was my faith in God that pulled me through. When you believe in God, and there were times my faith was tested, and I'm more than happy to share those times. But when you truly believe in God, then you know that even when everything is wrong, the most wrong, like the worst of the worst, expressions of disappointment, sadness, rejection, betrayal that you could experience, you say to yourself, okay, God, or you say to God, I don't like what's going on. This is really uncomfortable, but I know you love me and I know you're working in my life. And therefore, while I don't understand it now, I have to have faith that you are doing this not to me, but for me. And when you believe that in your most painful times it's happening for you, it's why you'll keep living.
That's the definition of faith.
Yeah. And God only works where there's faith. And I have found that in the time that my faith was so tested that I lost it. I'm ashamed to say it, but I lost my faith. I thought God stopped loving me. I went through something so painful.
Because we're all human. We're all human.
What I was living through, I made a prayer to God. I was literally lying on the ground outside my home. It was like 5 p.m. I was still in my pajamas because I was riddled with anxiety and depression, and I was going through the worst experience of my life. I cried to him on the ground because I wanted to be as close to the earth as possible so he could feel my tears. And I begged him, please take everything I have. Take my homes, take everything other than my children and our family's health. I will make this any trade to make this stop. And it didn't stop. And at that point, I just felt he doesn't love me. And for many years, I suffered. I suffered with depression and anxiety and suicidal ideations. My life was meaningless. If I did not have children, I would not be here, seated here, doing this podcast with you. My love for my children is what kept me tethered to the earth, because I loved them more than I hated my pain. But that was about it. And but when you asked, Tanya, about your resiliency, I didn't always have children. So what kept me going? As I said, it's those moments that you connect with God. But I will tell you, when I lost my faith, I couldn't heal. And when I dug deeper, it's because God only works where there's faith. If I believe every blessing I have is from God, and healing from a trauma would be a blessing from God, I would thank God every day if he were to do that for me, then I need to have God working my life, but God only works where there's faith. So if I don't have faith, God's not working in my life. So it really brings out, when you talk about resiliency, imagine having to believe in something that you wonder, does that even exist? I mean, that's what you said, that's faith.
So I would just say one thing, that even when you don't have faith, God is still working in your life, but you just can't recognize it. It's still, God is never gone. No. It's just, when you don't have faith, you just can't recognize it. And it's not just a mental, it's a physical. It's everything about you. It becomes like that.
And I also think that hate is the opposite of faith. And when I'm looking at all the hatred in the world, I question these people, like their faith in God or in goodness. I think people that have hate are like soulless people. Because after what I've been through, and I was really wronged, I still don't hate those people. Like, I don't have that in me to hate. I'm hurt, but I'm not someone who's filled with hate. And I'm grateful for that, because when you hate, you destroy your own life with that. Like, it is such an ugliness that rots you from within. And I won't give someone that power. I won't hate you, because that ruins me, not you.
Yeah, you're the one that suffers from that, not them. They don't care. It's only you.
I've said that. If they cared, they wouldn't have hurt you in the first place.
Exactly. If they were human beings and had a brain and had a compassion, they wouldn't have done it.
Correct.
But they don't have that. But the only one that suffers is you when you hate.
Yeah. So when you think about what happened with Hamas on October 7th, they were jubilant. They were cheering. They were throwing candy in the streets.
Calling their parents. Look at what I did.
Look at what I did, because they value death more than life. And that is something that, as Jewish people, we value life. And I think that's also where, like, my resiliency comes from, and it's knowing that is who we are as people. My father, in my darkest days, I'd call him, and I really was not doing well. I'm like, I don't think I can keep going. And he would say to me, just live one more day, because I'm really busy. Today's not the day. If you're going to do something, it can't be today.
It's inconvenient for me.
Very inconvenient.
It's the most Jewish father that you could possibly.
Can you do it tomorrow? But his calendar could have been empty. He knew that literally it was just healing from any trauma or any disappointment in business or life. It's about putting one foot in front of the other. So it was about just keep going. So he maybe, and then the next day I'm like, is today a better day? He's like, no, maybe later in the week.
I have a meeting today.
But
Can you wait till tomorrow?
At some point, things do change. And so I think my resiliency comes from a long line of, the Jewish stock. I think my parents instilled really good values in me. My love of people certainly comes from my grandma Claire. She was probably one of the most influential women in my life when it came to philanthropy. She always had a tzedakah box. She always say, put money in the pishka, and you put it with your penny, your nickel, that's, metal box. And, I think so much of my need to help others was really instilled in me from just being so close to my grandma. And I've often been asked, what are your favorite sayings? Or if you could have a saying on your tombstone, what would it be? And I straddle two. Hopefully it's a big tombstone. I can put two.
You can have three.
Okay,
It's your tombstone. You get to choose.
Well, I guess my quote would be after, beloved mother, maybe grandmother, daughter, sister, friend. Don't settle for mediocrity where greatness can exist. And I could apply that to anything.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And what's the other quote?
And when you take care of the needs of others, God will always take care of your needs. And I want to attribute that to something that I'm seeing right now. And I'm going to try and do without judgment. One of the things that I have struggled with, so I'm going to share liability, is my righteousness can lead me to be judgmental. Right? Because I live with a certain code of ethics, and if you don't abide by those, then I easily judge you for it and dislike you for it, possibly. And what my therapist said is, when people do things that you don't agree with, instead of judging it, be curious about it, which is really brilliant. Because in curiosity, the answer that you'll probably you'll arrive with a little bit more kindness and empathy. So let's talk about the fact that there are so many people out there, business people with huge resources to be fighting anti-Semitism. I mean, we've seen some do it really well. Look what Robert Kraft did, right? $6 million commercial. There are the people with deeper pockets that haven't done those things. Then I take a look at, female business leaders in the city who also have social media platforms, 10 times more followers than me. They're Jewish, not a word.
Well, we tried to get one of the Fortune 500 companies, and the founders are Jewish. And we pushed and pushed and pushed, and now we're making them give a $250,000 check instead because they refused to say something, and they were Jewish.
They're afraid. They're suffering from fear. They're afraid to lose their followers. They're afraid of this. They're afraid of that.
So then you say, okay, so what are you fearful of? Like, why should I not be afraid? Do I not value my followers? Do I not value my income or my company? Of course I do, right? So you have to explore what the fear is about, right? What are they fearing? When you have faith and you're doing the right thing, we are all God's children, right? So when we're speaking on behalf of God's children, God bears witness to that. When you take care of God's children, God is now indebted to you, but God doesn't live in debt. He will repay you with blessings. We all have resources. You have your time, you have your kindness, you have connections, you have maybe money. We all have something to give to help someone else better their life. Can we agree on that?
Absolutely.
Of course. We say an hour spent can change the trajectory of somebody's life is a very, very valuable hour. There is no dollar you can get on that. If you can change someone's life for good in an hour, what's that worth? $1 million? $10 million? What's that worth?
We know that sometimes there are people who have an abundance of resources or a resource, but they're afraid to share it. Why? Because in their time of need, they think they're not going to have.
They believe that resources are limited, but we know because God gives us limitless.
So this was the metaphor that this man shared with me on this plane ride since I'm 25 and has stayed with me ever since. It's a metaphor my children know. They will probably say it when they eulogize me because it's such an important lesson in life. If you think of resources as water coming out of the sink, so you turn the faucet on and it's coming out, right? Whether it's money, your time, right? Sometimes people call you for your advice. You're like, I'm having such a busy day. You're like, can I call you later? You don't pick up the phone because your time is valuable, right? Our times are most important currency because you can make more money. You can't make more time. Sometimes we don't want to give our time to people. So think of whatever it is your currency, your advice, your connections, your money, and that's what's coming out of the sink. That's the water. But you're so afraid that you're not going to have enough for yourself. Try and grab it. Go like this. And then you're like, yeah, I got it. It's all in here. I'm squeezing it tight in my hand. But when you open up your hand, what do you really have? Maybe a few droplets. On the other hand, if this is your currency and you're not stingy and grabby with it, keeping it for yourself, and you put two hands under the sink, which means anyone can come and get it, right? You're not stingy. Look at how much more you can collect. And this has been how I've lived my life. When it came to nutrition, people would say to me, why are you sharing everything on social media? I was charging $25,000 for new clients. I was the highest earning dietitian in the country. Why would I give away for free what my patients were paying for? And my answer is because I can, because it brings me joy. And I know that that is not going to be where my shortfall happens. God sees why I'm doing it, because I have something that can help people, and not everyone can afford to come see me, and not everyone has the resources, the accessibility. Why would I be stingy with a solution that can change your life? If I know F Factor can help you to lose weight and improve your health and increase your chances for longevity, I'm only going to share that with people who can pay for it.
No, it's
Wrong girl. And that's how I've lived my life, with my time, my energy, my connections.
That's a big part of your success, and that's a big part of why you're able to empathize with people, is that you always lived with your hands open, and your whole concept is, you give away your diet in a book. That book can be passed to other people. You didn't give away your diet in a platform on your website that you have to subscribe to and only links for 3 months. You gave it away first on the book.
The reason I wrote the book is because I knew that not everyone could afford my services. And that's only, by the way, that's when I was charging only $5,000 as a dietitian. Imagine I got to $25,000. So to me, writing a book, that allowed people to have access to the program. We are becoming so overly sensitive that we are no longer discussing the elephant in the room. And I don't just mean about health and weight. I think we could talk about this in any industry. And I do strongly believe that no one should ever be marginalized. And we're seeing this right now with religion. But no one should be marginalized or made to feel less than because of their size, because of their race, because of their sexual orientation, because of their religion. But this overcorrection that we've seen, I don't think we went too far. And I'm hoping that when the dust
Common
settles,
sense has been lost somewhere.
and people are afraid to speak now. And I was burned at the stake for science. So somehow my suggesting that you are healthier if you're leaner was taken as a judgment when it's just a fact. And I think that when people put emotions before facts, it's very dangerous. And that's what we're seeing right now when people are marching the streets saying Free Palestine. They are putting their emotions before the facts. There never was a Palestine. There was never a time in history where there was a sovereignty called Palestine. There just wasn't. So the idea of free Palestine, or from the river to the sea, I'm a sensitive person. I don't want to see any innocent civilian harmed. I don't care where you live. But to somehow suggest that there is a genocide occurring, absence of facts, that Israel is a colonialist, absence of facts, that Israel doesn't care about Palestinians, complete absence of facts. We're the most humanitarian army in the world.
It's the opposite of the fact, actually.
Of course. And I think that's sort of where we are right now in history, is that emotions are overriding facts. And that scares me.
Well, that was what happened to you in the past. It was an emotion. It was somebody, I saw it, and I was saying before, I saw somebody who was looking to take you down, but to prop themselves up.
100%.
I was taught when I was in fitness, I was taught by an amazing client of mine, Amalia Olsner, her dad, and she's super, super successful. She said to me that her dad says everybody has jealousy in the world. There's two types of it. One is, I see what you have. I don't want you to have it. If you don't have it, that means I'm okay and I won't be jealous of you anymore. But then there's the other jealousy, which is something I have. I look at you and I go, you have so much. I will do everything I can to also have it. And when you have that, people want to be around it. Okay. So you were attacked by the first one.
I agree.
But I think there's a lot of people on the second one that look at you as this inspiration of a person. And that's the silent. Most people, most quality, good people are the second type of jealousy. And they're trying to be like you, but not so you don't have, that they can have it too. They just need a mentor. And you're offering mentorship for free.
Yeah.
And you're offering mentorship out of love instead of out of some other horrible force.
So when people are jealous and they want you to have less, that is something that I've had to really explore these past few years. Like, what is that really about? And what it's about is they don't believe in themselves, because I'm constantly inspired by greatness. I see people who are faster, smarter, younger, more beautiful, more stylish. I want to be around it. It excites me. It challenges me. I want to learn from them. I want to harness what I've experienced or witnessed and figure out how can I take it for myself to advance myself and become everything that I can be. I would never look at you and say, but I don't want them to have it. And you never get ahead in life if the only way you can sort of stand tall is by pushing everyone down. I don't think God blesses that. And
Definitely
therefore
not.
I think what happens is we love when we see people sort of on the rise. All right. So like when someone's on the up and up, because it feels inspirational, it feels accessible. Like they started here,
I can do it
here,
too.
I can do it too. So what happens is as people are building, they're cheered for. And this is in Hollywood, this is in sports. But then when someone gets really high, all of a sudden the disparity of where this person is and where this person is too much. And rather than reflect upon that and say, why haven't I moved up? What is it about me that I'm not seeing the success I want in my marriage, in my friendships, in my career? What do we start doing? We want to take them down. By taking them down, all of a sudden, I don't have to feel so bad about myself. And that to me is so sad, because I think about the person that came for me to try and ruin me and my company. And I think if you took all that energy to build something of value, what do you want your legacy to be? That you destroyed something or you created something? Because I know what I want my legacy to be. I want to say I left the world a better place because I created something, not because I took something away that I didn't agree with. And look, I believe in advocacy. And if you don't agree with something, that's where a healthy dialogue happens. That's where you say to the person, can I challenge what you're saying? But you don't stonewall the person and then
Let's
try and
talk.
destroy them.
Let's have an open
And what
dialogue.
happened to me was we were stonewalled from the beginning. Everyone, my company was blocked, I was blocked, and the lies just kept going and going and going. And we're seeing it all over again with what's happening in Israel and Hamas. And I think that is where sort of this strength is coming in, because I've lived through it once. And many ways, did it prepare me for this? Maybe, but I don't perceive this as like my career. I think there are people that truly are brilliant in this space. And I'm just here to contribute my voice to them. Like that's their calling. My calling is helping people. And for now, I want to lend my voice and my energy to this, mostly because there's such a void and there's a need.
But I think, it was very clear exactly what you're saying when, many years ago, Israel gave back, what was it, the Summit over the Green Line? Mm-hmm. And there was a beautiful city, I can't remember the name of it, but what did they do? They came and destroyed everything. They ripped everything apart. Everything had been built up and they just destroyed it all.
And, I think when we think about actions, right, and we're so quick to judge, where people have to sort of pull back and soften a little bit is ask, what's the intent? What's do I really think someone's intention is that bad? Because that's when you approach things with more curiosity, I think that's really where the truth comes out. But there's so much anger when emotions override facts or history. That's sort of like this very tenuous, space that we're in history right now. And it's concerning. And that's why facts matter. And I'm just trying to do what I can to amplify the facts, because the lies are so strong right now.
Well, you talk to the silent majority that want the facts. And we had people listening on our podcast, not Jewish, people in Ireland. It's crazy. And they go, we get so much information from Instagram and we don't know what to believe. We listen to your podcast and all of a sudden we're like, we finally feel educated into what's going on. And I thought we'd be talking about money the whole time, but we're really talking about success. And I said, money's a mindset, and we try to pivot it or whatever. But we do the best. We do the best we can.
Yeah, what you just said is the heart of my entire existence as a professional woman. If you were to say at the end of the day, like, what is F Factor? Sure, a health and wellness company based on fiber-based nutrition. It's an education company. We educate. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. My clients go through a 1.5 hour education. I don't know the last time a doctor spent 1.5 hours with you. And we do it because I want you to understand how your body works. I want you to understand the science behind it, because if it now resonates with you on a cognitive level, that's when the buy-in happens. not because Tanya said so, because it's just science. Like when you finally learn 1 + 1 = 2, no one's ever can convince you that it's 6. You know that it's just 2. And that's what I was trying to do with nutrition, was to educate, because through education you empower.
Yeah.
And
Education can set you free.
And I walk the walk and talk the talk. I did it with Israel too. When I started to respond to everything happening in Israel, I knew that I had a lot of learning to do. I was not, a historian. I was not an
But you were willing to do the work.
I went to Israel. I probably went on one of the earliest missions to Israel. I went in November. And I went to bear witness, but I went to go speak to government dignitaries. I went to speak to families who have, whose family members were taken hostage. I spoke with families of soldiers who had died in the war. It was a very difficult trip, but I also saw the beauty that is Israel, and you need to go there to see it, which is a people that are resilient, but that love life and will fight for life. And it was about educating myself so I could speak with excellence and integrity in my spirit, knowing what I am sharing is based on facts. It's what I've seen with my own eyes. And I think that education, as you said, is what sets you free, but education is also what's the most empowering thing in the world.
So, Tanya, we did a little game before on this, and it was about your values. And we've talked not a lot about what nutritional tips that you would give, but I didn't even want that. The only question I do have is this genetic testing thing, is this really popular, and should I do it?
I believe that genes play a tremendous role in giving people information. And what I mean by that is that once you have information about your genealogy, are you at risk for certain conditions, now you can start to act in a way that's more preventative.
Understood.
And
so it's all education. It's all education.
Knowledge is power.
You're learning about who you are and what your body is.
I have the BRCA gene, which puts me at risk for breast cancer. I now have some decisions to face. I can be completely proactive and have a double mastectomy, or I can start living in a way that reduces my risk factors, or perhaps now there's newer medications. So I think that understanding your genetic predisposition for any clinical condition is super important. Why would you not want to know? Don't put your head in the sand.
Before mom and I got married, we had to do some testing.
Yes, there was a Jewish panel.
Yeah, we had to do that to make sure that there was nothing.
Now they're using it for nutrition and what your body can actually process.
The more I know about you and your body, the better I can treat you.
100%.
The more, you can know about someone's finances. Do you have stocks? Do you have bonds? Do you have investments? How else can you prepare for their retirement?
We love going for us, and where we find this specific space and where we found success, and just this is our nonprofit arm, so this is not a profitable.
Mine too.
Yeah, it's great. It's really but it's the same thing. It's long term, and that's how we do. And we said, if we don't do now, we're not doers, and we're doers, so we're gonna have to do it. Sorry, everybody.
God
like it, don't like it, and we've lost clients, but most importantly, we fired clients that said, "Hey, I actually have a big problem with the Jews," and I said, "Well, we're a Jewish company, and we have a big problem with people who have problems with us."
If you're anti-Semitic, or you don't love Jewish people, or you dislike Jewish people because of what's happening in Israel, which is anti-Semitism, because now anti-Zionism, you're equating that to disliking Jews. I don't want your money. I don't want you in my life. I don't want your energy. I don't want you following me. That's all negative energy. You're not well-wishing for me and my people.
Go somewhere else. If you want me dead, go somewhere else.
What's interesting is that I have almost doubled my Instagram following since I started talking about Israel.
Right.
At the beginning, I started losing followers. I did not care. That was the faith in God. I knew what was right. I didn't care. I was like,
That's your integrity. That's probably why people came to you, because they saw that you were honest.
And I think, it's just so, I always say it's so short-sighted when you are worried about yourself, and have faith in God, because God blesses the righteous. God blesses those that do for others and put others before their own needs. In your time of need, God will be there.
I find that God gave me an ability to connect with people through a deep level of empathy, and through my mouth, through my talking. And that's why even when I was 23, I was able to make $250,000 my first year out of college, because I had this ability to talk to people. And I always said, God, it's God gave me this gift. And that's really why we started the podcast, because I said, I have to give this gift to the world. I have to constantly do it. And if you realize that this is an ability that God gave me, not from myself, number one, he'll take it away. You see all these people who were incredible singers, they get voice cancer, or that's always a fear, but you have to give what God gave you to the world. You have to pay it forward. Thank you, and move it forward.
So when you started to speak about God's gifts to you, someone else could have heard that and think, what an arrogant son of a bitch. So full of himself, God's gifts. Who does he think he is? God gives to man? But I didn't hear it like that. I heard it as you are someone who's humbled by how God has blessed you. And when you honor God's blessings, when you appreciate them, you thank him. Hopefully you thank him for the blessings. He just wants to give you more. But there are people who, rather than celebrating the fact that you are honoring God's blessings by acknowledging them, they dislike you for that. They think it's your arrogance. And I experienced this firsthand. I too believe everything I have is a gift from God. And what God has given me, God can take away. I didn't really fear the evil eye from other people because I'm like, wait, everything I have that people perceive as a blessing, my marriage, my company, the health of my kids, no unhappy person on the Upper East Side looking at me with their evil eye, they can't take that away. Only God can take that away. But think about in just even saying that. For someone that doesn't have blessings, that doesn't believe in themselves, that doesn't have faith, the idea that you feel that you're blessed, rather than saying that's so humble that they recognize it, that they have gratitude for it, they see that as something negative about you when it's not. And so when you were saying that, I was hoping that we could actually talk about that a little, because I want people to be proud of their strengths, but to use them for good and to nurture them and to be able to say this was a gift. Now, one of the things that I had said is I have a uniquely compassionate heart. So you're like, oh, she's so full of herself. She thinks she's so nice. No, that's a gift from God. But with that heart, I also have a purpose, right? It's sometimes like, having such a good heart, it's a little bit of a burden because God gave that to me to use it for a reason. So I loved when you said that because there was a kinship there. I was like, oh, I so know what that feels to feel blessed and want to celebrate it. When you're a light and you give out light, what happens is people who are dark are attracted to that light. Sometimes they want that light for them. They're like a vampire. They want to take that light for themselves because they're so dark, or they just want to bask in your light. But it doesn't mean they care about you. They're using you for your light. Now, there are some people that just want to dim your light because your light's too bright and it just reflects on how dark their life is. So one of the things that I had to learn is you need to be careful where you shine your light. It doesn't mean you shouldn't shine it. But my biggest lesson right now is about trust. And that's why I thanked you for the opportunity to share today, because I felt that you were both really good people. And it's what allowed me to give you the best of myself, thinking that you were coming here with the best of yourselves. And there was just a purity and a clarity in both your eyes that gave me that intuition. But I really celebrated when you were talking about God's blessings. I was cheering for you. And I was thinking, good for him, because that's where confidence comes from, not from the world telling you that you're great or that you matter. Your joy comes from celebrating God's blessings, what he's given you.
So I have to tell you a little story quickly before. So I've been stressing about this podcast, and we've interviewed incredible people on this podcast. And I've been stressing about it so much so that I didn't even think you were going to come. And Marlene was like, because I don't know, it's just scary. I don't know, whatever.
We've had other people also, like they say they're going to come and then they don't.
It's challenging. So I said to my wife, I said, what am I going to give Tanya? What am I going to give to the person that can have everything for herself? The same thing that nobody can give me anything. I'm like the worst person to give a gift to. And I'm stressing. So I went, let me get the necklaces. Maybe you can give it to your kids or somebody that you meet, or just to pay it forward, the hostage necklaces. And then you were sitting down in my office and you're saying, well, I went through my Nova Festival and just going through that trauma yourself. And that's why you had to go see it and you had to connect. And that's why probably you were so powerful on it. And so I hung on my wall. I just went to Israel and I had a picture of the Nova Festival, only picture I painted. So only picture that I printed. So I went, you have to take this picture. It was too connected that I couldn't find something that I wanted to give you and thank you, really to thank you for the lives that you are saving.
Thank you.
And know that people are seeing it and appreciate it. And I said, you just said the Nova Festival. I have a picture of the Nova Festival right behind you. I have to give it to you.
Well, thank you.
So thank you.
I read a lot and I learn a lot. And it's so important for me to pay it forward because that's where my joy comes from, not holding it on to for myself. I like to give more than I like to receive. I think many people are like that. It's so fun to give a gift and watch the person open it. It feels so good to help someone, right? To give a job, to do a favor. I love to give.
A job is amazing. When somebody gets a job, it's amazing.
And I don't like receiving. I mean, I like a nice gift from my husband, don't get me wrong, but I don't like favors. I don't like to be indebted to people. It's just sort of how I live. And therefore, like if we went for lunch, like I let me buy you lunch. I'm like, no. Like I get very like, I don't want to owe you anything. Through my reading and through faith, this is a beautiful lesson because when you offered me that painting off the wall, the print, I easily could have said, oh, no, it's too much. I can't take it. The reason I have learned to accept gifts, well, first of all, I need to trust the source. And I'll explain why it's important to trust the source. Don't take things from people that are not good people. And I'll explain why. The reason that you agree to receive, if your friend wants to buy you a round of drinks or someone wants to take you out for lunch or someone wants to give you a gift. At the beginning of this podcast, we discussed that we're all God's children. No matter what your race, your ethnicity, your religious beliefs, your sexual orientation, we're all God's children. When you show kindness to one of God's children by giving something, it could be, a print, but it could be your advice, your time, any currency that you have, anything that you have to give. You gave me, as I said, a print. You did something kind for me. You did it because you thought I would enjoy that. I would like it, make my life better in some way, something meaningful, right? You did that for me. So God saw that you did something for me, and God won't live in debt. So God will now give you a blessing. When you refuse gifts from people, you're being a blessing blocker. And therefore, often when I would try and do something for someone, like, no, I got it. I'm like, are you really going to block me from getting a blessing today? I'm like, I could use all the blessings I can get. Let me get your lunch, please. God will reward me 100 times over. I got your lunch. When you refuse kindness from people, you're interfering with their abilities to get blessings. And most people need blessings.
So you're taking away my mitzvah.
But be careful. Don't take things from people that their intentions aren't good. Like, don't be setting someone up for a mitzvah that is malintentioned, right? So be selective where you take, but if you think someone's good, right, then that's where you can receive because you get something, but they get blessed for it. And before I couldn't see it, I would just think, oh, now I'm indebted. I owe them something. No, God got them.
Times 10.
Yeah, times 10.
Times 10. That's the whole thing with giving charities. That it's the only requirement that man can put on God is that when you give somebody one, you get 10-fold in back. It's a requirement that God has. And
but it's the only where you can make a deal with God. Like I could say, I'm going to give tzedakah now, and I want to get $1 million this year. That's the only mitzvah you're allowed to do that with.
Yeah. The seed must lead and you reap what you sow. So what you put into the ground is what you get. And when people want more money, my response is give more money. You want better friends? Go be a friend. Go to an old age home and befriend someone whose family hasn't visited them in years. Whatever it is that you're lacking in your life, the seed must lead. You must do that first. So put money in. So give money
because I'm part of a networking group.
That was the most important part of this.
Yeah, because I'm part of a networking group.
What you just said was
the seed must lead.
So he says we have one member of our group. He always says, "Oh, how come I'm not getting this referral? How come not this? They're not referring me. They're not introducing me." And I talked to my very good friend who started the chapter with me, and we say, "How many referrals have you given?
Right.
How much have you contributed that you should expect all this back?"
Yeah. Yes. And that's why, like when things were going so well for me and for F Factor and my marriage and everything, I knew that I had planted those seeds. I really felt everything was a blessing from God. But it was interesting that in saying that, how people were so offended by that. And then you have to question why. Why can't they see the beauty in that I'm being so humble? I'm saying.
It's hard. It's a hard thing to see. It's not easy.
But it has to come. You have to be sort of pure of heart to hear someone praise God for a blessing they've received and cheer for them rather than question like their character.
People
like
don't
their
understand it though.
arrogance,
They don't really
you know?
understand
So
it.
you got to find your people.
So that's
and
the
that's what it is.
education. That's the education.
Yeah. So find your people, but be true to yourself. And I rather have a smaller audience or a group of friends that are genuine based on similar values than, as we said, speaking to more people that you're not really connected to. And
It's quality over quantity.
exactly. But you want to end with something. You said the seed must lead. You can apply that to anything.
I think that if you're missing, what I took from that, why I found that so important, is that if you were missing friends, if you feel alone, go out and befriend somebody who wants to be a friend. Give to somebody.
Yep.
And I say it all the time. If you feel like you can't do right now, do what you're strong at. You can, and there's so much opportunity and there's so much need and demand for people to do good.
And the beauty about giving, and we've all experienced this. I've worked in a soup kitchen, my company. Like we did a lot of community service as a company. I wanted to be part of the community here in New York and give back. We're having such tremendous success. So as a company, we would go, we called it Monday Hospitality. And on Mondays, we'd work in a soup kitchen, or we cleaned up a park in the Bronx, but we were really trying to give back. And what people lose sight of, it's like, when you're feeling down, like go do for others, because when you're giving charity, you're doing charitable work, you think, oh, they're just receiving, they're getting the benefit. The way you feel when you take care of others, when you help someone, who really wins? You do. So after a night of charitable work or a charitable day cleaning up a park, you leave feeling so happy. And that's sort of the beauty that is sort of untapped. And when people are stuck and they're unhappy, when you say, go do for others, take your mind off your own problems, focus on someone else's needs, someone that has less than you or less than you in a certain part of their life. Now you've helped someone, God will bless you, but you also immediately did get that hit of dopamine.
You get outside yourself.
Yeah,
you get outside yourself.
But it feels good to help others. So what I've learned, when something's irritating in your life, that's not an accident. God put that irritation into your life to smooth out your rough edges. That irritant is like a file, rubs up against you, but it's smoothing you out. What God's saying is you need to work on patience.
That's because you
That's true.
believe everything that happens to you, no matter what, is from God for a reason,
Yeah.
to teach you something.
Yeah.
So you have to understand everything that happens during the day, anytime, you got to learn from it. And if you don't learn from it, then God has to do it again and repeat it to you again because you're not listening.
Yeah.
Why aren't you listening?
So I'm a work in progress. I have a very reactive personality. I am also a perfectionist. I don't suffer fools. And sometimes it comes out in a way that's unkind. And that's very shameful for me, because you're meeting someone who is so well-intentioned. And I want you to feel so good about yourself when you're with me. But then if you mess up and I'm irritated by that, I make you feel like I don't care about you.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm working on.
But some people will say that that's what life is all about.
Of course.
That's what it's all about. Just that's what it's about. Not the money, not the rest of the success is not, but
it's personal
is what life is
growth,
about.
But understand that most people, the problem is an absence of self-awareness. And if you're not self-aware, you can never grow.
Of course not.
Because awareness of your liabilities, which means that you have to sometimes have an absence of ego or be willing to recognize that you're flawed. And I've got a long list of liabilities. I'm happy to share them with you. And I'm happy to say that I've got some strengths too. And there's plenty about me that's in between that's mediocre. But refusing to acknowledge that you have liabilities, there's no room for growth.
But my question always is, how do you get that self-awareness? Like, how does that happen? Like somebody that's completely unaware. Look, I became religious.
Yep.
I have 3 other brothers. I'm the only one out of 4 of us that became religious. How come they didn't? Why is it was only me? Why is it somebody else self-aware? Why don't you see what I see?
Yeah. So I think that there's 2 things there. I think one is lifestyle and one's genetics. I just think it's the way you're wired, because I have twins and they're completely different. You have twins.
I have twins.
So you know that they're different. Their lifestyle's pretty similar probably, right? Same crib, same diet to a certain extent. And then how do they start to develop so differently? Why is one like this? Why is one like that? So I think that it's lifestyle, what we're exposed to. I think it's also what we expose ourselves to. I do a lot of reading. That's how I really connected to faith, was through reading. Because I grew up a conservative Jewish girl in Great Neck, but my connection to Judaism was really through traditions, not so much through faith. I observed the holidays. I went to temple, I went to Hebrew school, but I didn't really pray to God. I didn't really speak to God until something happened where I needed something bigger than me.
What happened?
I got divorced. I was really, it was my first marriage, and I was really unhappy. And I had a child. He was 1, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to break up my marriage for my son's sake because he was the innocent victim in this. And I was so unhappy. And I went to the bookstore and I went to the marriage section thinking I was going to find a book on marriage because I was fighting with my husband all the time because I resented him. We had moved to Florida for his business and I missed my family and I wasn't, I love him, but it was not the right union. So we got into an argument and I went to the bookstore. And as I said, I'm someone that, I want to read and learn and I want to fix things. So I went to the marriage section and I saw these books on how to improve your marriage. And then I realized it's not about that, Tanya. It's about fixing yourself first. So I left the marriage section, I went to the self-help section. And through there is how I found this book that actually had to do about living your best life, but through God. And that's really how I found my faith. But that was not an accident. And it was through my faith in God that I had the resolve to leave because I believed in myself. I knew God didn't bless mediocrity. Not that my husband was mediocre. The marriage is mediocre. First, we need to work on something if it's mediocre. You need to do the work. Go to marriage counseling, go to a dietitian, go to a money manager, do the work. But if it's not working, then God gives you the right to pivot, right? So
is that when you started your company after that point?
I was already in business. Yeah,
in business. Did you find it skyrocket afterwards? Because that's a real moment.
Yeah, no, I think...
and it's the theme, a lot of this. I did not think, that's why Marlene was asking me the questions. I said, I'll give you questions, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm not going to ask you because I don't know where the podcast is going to go. I don't know where the conversation is going to go.
Well, I'm glad that we allowed it to unfold like this today.
I would say, because I've gone through a lot of different things too, that moment to know when to pivot is the tough part. You don't know when to give up or when to go on because you don't know whether you should you're not giving it your commitment or whether it's time to move on.
I have the answer to that.
Oh, waiting for this.
You just know.
You just know.
And what does that mean? It means that decisions are made because we use our head and our heart. So some decisions are very emotional. Other decisions are very logical, right? But when something's very logical, but your heart's not in it, it doesn't feel 100% right. When something's purely emotional, but logically, you're like, this makes no sense. You also have trepidation. When they're aligned, that's when you are fearless. And I'll never forget saying this to a friend. She gave me the advice, and I've now have really thought about it, and it makes a lot of sense. When I wanted to get divorced, and I said to her, how do you know? And she said, you just do. You just know. If it's only logical, right? It's like, okay, can I afford to do this? Where are we going to live? But my heart wasn't ready. I would have regretted the decision. I wasn't ready. I would have maybe always looked back and wondered. If it was only emotional, but logically, none of it made sense, I could have left and had nowhere to live it, I would have regretted it. Only when the two are aligned, and you'll know in that moment, because it's basically harmony between your heart and your head. And that's when you talk about decisiveness, you just know. But you do the work. I always say it's anything in life worth having is not easy. So if something's not feeling right, do the work first to fix it. Anything, a friendship, a career. If you're unhappy at the job, speak to your manager first. Don't just quit. You put the work in. But if after trying, it's still not working, life is too short to suffer. If you're suffering in life, if you stay married the entire time because you refuse to get divorced, because you're fearful, you think it's wrong, but you suffered, that was not the purpose of your life. If you stay in a job that was miserable, that wasn't the purpose of life. We're supposed to pursue happiness and our overall life experience even with the worst of times. And I've been through some of the most traumatic experience that led me to want to take my life. I hope when I look back, I could say overall it's a happy life. It wasn't always happy, but overall I pursued happiness.
It doesn't mean it's easy.
It's nothing
doesn't
in
mean
life.
it's easy, but it can be overall happy. And I would say one other thing also. I say, if you're staying in your situation because of fear, then that's the wrong thing.
Well, where there's fear, there's not faith.
Correct.
People who are fearless are faithless, because faith is the absence of fear.
But it's not easy. It's not easy to have faith. It's not easy.
I admitted I lost my faith. I just lost it. And because I lost it, I couldn't heal from my trauma. And it was my child. And sometimes the child's your teacher. She believes in God. She has a very close relationship to God. And she said, Mommy, you need to return to God. It's why you're not healing. You need God.
So deep.
And now I work with a rabbi every week. And, I'm really, because I have regular doctors for trauma, and I have a rabbi who I'm working with, because I know that my healing will come through clinical Western medicine, which is, doctors who know how to treat trauma, right? Psychology. But I also, because of my connection to God, know that the other part of it has to be my faith. My faith has to come back. And, it is. And I believe that's why I'll heal.
Do you find, what would you say for the people who are going through trauma right now? What would be your advice, and what would you tell them?
Call me.
For the women that and men that are going through such trauma right now.
Look at how quickly I said that, which is so unrealistic.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
I meant it, because what they say is, first off, I've worked in the healthcare field, so I chose a line of work where I wanted to help people. Once you go through trauma, you are uniquely qualified to help someone who's been through a trauma, because what happens with trauma, you become even more empathic. You become even more compassionate.
And you know what they're going through. So it's the same with us. On the financial side, I had my own financial struggles.
Yep.
So when people come to us and have financial struggles or are afraid of financial struggles, we know how to approach it.
And I've been very fortunate to have worked with really incredible doctors, and I've learned a lot, and I read a lot about trauma. And what I believe is that through trauma, something more beautiful, but maybe different, will be birthed.
And what is that for you? What is the next? I asked you, and I wanted to know what the next stages were, because you've helped so many people and you're continuing to help so many people. So I think it is such a waste of a superhero, because you were given a supernatural gift. It's such a waste of your gift to not continue to go on this path, because you don't know all the positivity and all the people that you helped and all the waves and the ripple that you created. So what's the next stage for you?
So I don't know, but I know it will be impactful. F Factor, my company, was an extension of me. It wasn't all of me. It was the expression of my interest in helping people. It was about my love of people. It was about raising consciousness. It was about expressing to people, you can be the best you can be. I was just the co-pilot on that journey for my clients. I was not the one making it happen. I was there to cheer them on. But my entire mission was to inspire people, to empower them to be the best version of themselves. And that is my essence. That is the beauty of me. That is the purity of my heart. That is what's my desire. And I combine that with wanting to live a purpose-driven life. I know it is my calling to leave the world a better place than I found it. Hopefully through my children, of course, that's, your greatest legacy. But I also know that I have a way of connecting with people that is so sincere. And I hope that in those connections, I can leave them better than I found them in any small way. So to answer your question, anyone who's going through trauma, when I say they should call me, it's because I would generally sit with anyone and hold their hand and hug them and tell them it's going to be okay. But of course, that's not a realistic, response. So what I would say is trauma is life-changing, and you need support. You need friends, you need family, a therapist. You can't get through trauma alone, because so much of trauma is actually in telling your trauma. It's someone bearing witness. And it's why I ran to Israel, because I knew for the people of Israel who had been traumatized, I needed to bear witness for them. And that's why when you're in Israel, they just want to talk and share with you, because they want you to acknowledge what they've been through. And in the retelling, that's where the healing happens.
No,
So
the question.
don't hold it in. If you've been traumatized, find a safe space to talk about it. Find someone that is rooting for your success and loves you. There's a beautiful metaphor I can leave for you guys. I know we've spoken a lot today. I just experienced something that was life-changing. There's an art, and it's called kintsugi. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Okay. So I think it was the 12th century in Japan. There was an emperor, and he had his favorite teacup. And, they have a tea ceremony every day. They drink their tea the way that, Italians drink coffee. They drink tea. And it broke, and he was so upset. It was chipped, and, he sent it out to be fixed. And it went to the shop, and the way that they would fix pottery back then was like to use like metal staples, and it was not attractive. So they said he's going to be very displeased with the appearance of this, but they were determined to put it back together. So what did they do? They took all the seams and they covered it with 14-karat gold. Rather than hide the imperfections, they highlighted them. And when they returned it to him, despite the fact that it had all these cracks, but there were all these gold lines now everywhere, it became his favorite teacup. And the idea is that something that was once broken can actually be repurposed and become something even more beautiful that you treasure.
That's what I think is going to happen with you.
Thank you.
And our desire is that you continue this gift that you've been given. And I have a friend of mine. She runs a cleaning company, super successful. She's got like 100-something employees. She's making millions of dollars a year. And she's if she'll look at somebody, she'll go, well, his father's name is this, and his mom's name is this, and he comes from this town. And she'd never even, like, she's a seer. Like, she really has some form of, and not Jewish, she has some form of prophecy. It's really, and I haven't seen it once or twice. I've seen it many, many times from this one woman. She asked me, because I've been around that world a lot in my life, and that's something that I used to explore when I lived in Israel, when I traveled. And she asked me, what do I do with this? She said, I can make all the money in the world, but what do I do with this? I said, you have to give it back. You have to continue to help people. And if you get stuck on what do I do with this, you will not do. So for all the people in Israel and all the people going through trauma, instead of, it was an interesting thing. I'm sorry to pivot this, but it's an interesting thing to talk about people who went through the Holocaust. And if you noticed, right when they got out of the Holocaust, they never spoke about it. Because they could, and Rabbi Jonathan Sachs talks about this, they couldn't talk right away about it. But what they did was they waited 20 years until they were able to then talk about the past, because they knew that if they looked in the past, they'd turn into how Lot's wife was, a pillar of salt, and they would just fall into their tears. But what they did was they got up and they did, and they never looked past. And that's something that you're doing. And I think it's something you can empower so many people to do, because you, instead of sitting on the side, you said, you know what, I'm dealing with this. I can't be helping other people right now, but you decided to do, and it's part of your healing process, and it's part of people's healing processes.
1000%.
And it's amazing. And and it's such a deep way of living. And I think also, for me, the spirituality and this and having the rabbis connecting to the person that you are. So if you are going through trauma, or if you're looking to get to the next stages in your life, you need to find people that also connect with every part of your life. Don't just follow the traditional path and what everybody is saying. Find what speaks to you and customize your healing process.
That would be with any life change you're going to make, right? It has to resonate with you. And what my journey is and what someone else's journey is to heal from a trauma may be extremely disparate. The same way you may want to live in a coconut hut and you may want a mansion. They're both homes. It's about finding the right home for yourself, or about finding the right path for healing based on your values, right? If someone doesn't believe in God, a rabbi is not going to be helpful any more than a clergyman. So if you're all science-based, then so it's honoring who you are, but it's doing the work. And I'm proud to say I'm working really hard on healing. But much of my healing, because I felt betrayed by humanity. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, my character was not only questioned, but assassinated. And I didn't want to live anymore, because I was so proud of who I was. I was so proud that I was seen as a self-made, hardworking entrepreneur who built a company for the sole purpose of helping people.
And change the world. You changed the world. You did.
I hope.
No, you did.
So
you did.
You can imagine, for someone to come for that, money comes and goes, right? A company can come and go, but your reputation is all you have. You can't buy a reputation.
I think your reputation is better than it's ever been.
You earn it.
And I think it's better than it's ever been.
So
because you're not just talking to.
I mean, to me, the most important thing is you stay true to yourself,
yes.
you know, and you know who you are, and you've gone
Yes.
through that tough time, and you've emerged as a better person, a stronger person. You've gone through that forge of fire. You know, they say, like, what about the Jews? You know, why is the wine and the grape so important in Judaism? Is because when it's pressed, that's when the best part of the grape comes out.
Yeah.
The same with the Jews, and we're seeing that now in Israel, and I think we see that with you and with us as well. That when we're pressed, that's when the best comes out, and that's how you're getting to your best. Yeah. And I think God has given that to you for that reason.
And I think that you being so open to it is we find when people go through financial troubles, they all say the same thing, that nobody else understands them, and they all feel alone.
Yeah, of course.
But you're telling the world that they're not alone. And there's not just women in Israel who are going through trauma and people in Israel. There's people around the world that are saying they're not going alone. So I think you're doubling.
And you're not alone.
And you're not alone. And you're doubling. And we're not alone. Also, we went through serious trauma ourselves as a family. We went through it together.
Yeah. No, and I think that's part of my healing is, and I've talked about this with my therapist so many times. If God chose me for this, right? Because what I went through was inhumane, truly inhumane. But by going through it, I can make case law because I'm suing the person for defamation, and I will change what is allowed, what you could say about someone on social media. If my pain was used for purpose, that to me was worth it. I see that. It's like,
it's going to be for purpose. It's going to be for purpose.
Like, if what happened to me, I can help even one person by making case law, by setting a legal precedent. That's the only reason that I'm even suing this woman. I don't believe there's any financial recourse for me. So why would I sue someone if there's no recourse when it costs me money to sue them? I'm not evil. I'm not cruel. I don't care about this person. So I'm not trying to harm this person. It's for justice. It's to make sure this doesn't happen again. I believe she would do it again. But more importantly, I think it's happening and something has to change.
Or maybe one person will hesitate to do it again because of your fighting against it, thinking maybe I better not do that because look what happened before. And and Tanya fought back. So maybe this person will fight back. Maybe I won't do it. And you might never know.
I may never
You may never know.
I hope to know. That would be really great to know because after what I've been through, it would be really healing for me to know that this happened for a reason. That's why when I was speaking to the rabbi this past week and I was crying hysterically to him, I'm like, I'm just desperate to speak to God. If God would just come down and say to me, I still love you. I didn't do this to punish you.
You have to listen. That's all.
I did.
You have to listen.
Yeah, I did this because I'm working through you and I'm going to use this to advance you, but you're going to help more people. I would say, I'll take it. I'll do it then. I'll sign up for that because that to me would be my greatest legacy is to use what happened to me to help other people. I mean, it's pain for purpose. Right?
I think he's saying that to you.
Yeah, that's the same way that you see it. And I'm sure you see it for yourself. That's how it's so obvious.
Very obvious.
I just want to know your one value. If you were to say, okay, I define myself in one value. I know you had your tombstone quotes, but what would be the one value that you define yourself as?
Two came to mind, so I'm going back and forth.
You can go. We'll give you two.
So the first one was integrity, like the truth, like just integrity. And my second one is love. You know, I think about the first thing I thought about was my family, my husband, my children, my parents, my siblings, my friends. A life without love for me isn't a life, right? So I can have all the integrity in the world, but I didn't have people when you love others, it's the gift to yourself. How good does it feel to show love to someone? So I guess those are the two most important values for me.
Well, that's what got you through it all. And that's what you've done for others. And that's what you've given. And I feel it here.
Well, I just want to leave you both with a compliment because after what I've been through, I think there are gifts from trauma. And something that I lacked before was judgment. I trusted everyone. And now I make much more, although I was always looking to people's eyes because that's how I connect with you, I wasn't necessarily putting the effort into like seeing really who you were. And today I hope that you felt as I was looking to your eyes that I was making this connection with you.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I've received, the reason I felt so comfortable speaking is it's so obvious to me that you're both such good people.
Thank
Like there is a clarity in both of your eyes that allowed me to be so open and transparent and comfortable sharing what was, as I said, the most traumatic event of my life, and other ones that were equally challenging, or not quite equal, but challenging. So I think your ability to be who you are is why this, as you said, hobby, right? Because you're choosing to do this, right? You just said you could be retired. So your interest in connecting and amplifying voices and raising money for Israel, that's a choice for you. I've no doubt you're going to continue to leave your mark on the world in this way, because you have a very beautiful way of genuinely connecting with people for the purpose of wanting to enrich the world. It's not financially driven. It's not selfishly driven. I'm sure you enjoy your work and it's,
Oh, this is so fun.
Fun.
I love it.
But ultimately, why is it fun?
Yeah.
What about it? It's fun. And I walk away thinking, wow, I met two really special people today. And it was really nice to be
That's how we feel
to be
today
in
too.
a safe space with like-minded people, good people. And ultimately, for anyone that is worried about speaking on behalf of Israel or speaking up against anti-Semitism because you're going to lose friends, they were never your friends, you're going to lose customers, you don't want that money anyway, I promise you, you're going to find your people.
It's similar.
And today, I feel like I met my people.
We're happy to be your people, and we're happy to make friends. And I find this moment as like a refining moment in our lives. And we can refine, similar to COVID, we were talking before about this, is that we can refine the people that we want. And it gives us a restart. And we were so able to get a restart and just meet these amazing people, and just how this worked out, and so similar. And I think what I loved most is knowing this is who you are, and that's it. There's this social media identity that was portrayed, what is obviously not you. And look for 2 seconds, read for 2 seconds who these people are, and you'll learn. Educate yourself before you make assumptions.
But you know what? It was, in my defense, that was me.
100%.
It just was a part of me. But that's me. That's my family. That's my home.
But that's when look before listening to somebody who doesn't know anything.
And I think that's what hurt, because I was like, this is me. I was not an actress or putting up a portion.
That's the difference. There's so many.
What we were talking about, the reason so many people were so quick to impose things on me, my character, because that was their own fear in themselves. But they didn't know me, because if you know me, then you would know better. But what you think about others is typically, you fear in others what you know about yourself to be true. And I will stand by the fact that what you were seeing on social media, that was real. You don't have to like me. I may not agree with you. There's vanilla, there's chocolate, and then there's me, dark chocolate. So I'm not for everyone. But to suggest I would harm people's health or that I'm not a good person, there was nothing more hurtful you could ever accuse me of, because it's so antithetical to everything that I stand for.
Yeah, we had Tanya Zuckerbrot on the podcast a while back. I think that's the right pronunciation. No. Whatever, close enough.
Never is.
You said there's when we're even talking about Israel, there's 3 types of people. The people that are pro-Israel, we don't need to speak to them. They get it. We'll talk to them and we'll educate. And then there's the people that are not going to listen to anything ever, and that's not who I'm talking to either. It's the people in the middle. Correct. That's who you want to talk to. Correct. Those are the ones that are open to listening and need education. But the people that are not interested to talk about, maybe one day we'll try to talk to them, but right now
I agree.
They can't. We're not interested in them at all.
Our resources are too limited to be wasting our time speaking to a door that's closed. You want a door that's open.
But even for you, like on the people that were attacking you on social media, those are not people that aren't going to be open to it. You got to just. Those are, as you said, you could pity those people.
Yeah.
What I'd love to have is when you after this war hell is over. Yeah. We'd love to have, when you decide your next stage, we'd love to hear about it. And that would be just amazing, because it's really just such an amazing time that we get a glimpse into your life, and just to see this moment, because we view, and my dad and I, we think exactly the same. We're like, what an honor to be in this part of the journey from somebody who's so incredible and going through, like we're seeing it in real time.
Yeah.
and we'd love to see the byproduct of this. But it's amazing what you've done, and it's amazing what you are doing, and it's amazing how, I mean, you changed the world, and now you have another opportunity. Now you change it again for Israel. Now you have a third opportunity after you finish changing the narrative for Pro, and then you have a third opportunity to change the world again. Most people do it once in a lifetime. You're really going to be doing it 3 times at least.
From your mouth to God's ears.
So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We hope that you have success in all that you do, and you continue.
Which we know will happen.
Which we know that's no question. But thank you so much for coming, Marlene. Thank you for being the best ever. Shout out right there. Debbie was like, my wife Debbie was like, oh yeah, Marlene's coming. I go, yeah, Marlene's coming. She goes, Marlene's the best. I was like, I thought it was like a ChatGPT bot, but because she was so on top of it, I was like,
no, she's amazing. And anyone who's successful, they don't do it alone. And I'm only as successful as the people I surround myself with. My success has come from hard work, ambition, character, integrity, but it's also knowing that you can't do it alone. And it's finding people who share your values, share your dreams, share your vision, your work ethic, and are willing to stand by you and stand with you because
and care about you, and you care about them.
They feel they also feel the purpose of their work. So, I think it's such an important question when you hire someone is really understanding, what are their values, right? Do they want to live in a coconut hut or a mansion?
Yeah.
Neither's wrong.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll see you on the next one.